Hello children, I'm going to tell you a lovely Christmas story. It's a very special story about what Christmas really means. But first of all, I just need to check that you're sitting comfortably, otherwise you might get a numb bum, and we can't have that. Are you ready? I'm going to tell you the story of Terry the Terrible Elf by Joshua Potts. Terry was a terrible elf, a truly terrible elf. He wore the usual green and red uniform, and Christmas was his absolute favourite. Terry's problem, however, was that he was, terrible. He built with love, but perhaps a little too much love. A carelessness of love made him clumsy. The chocolates that Terry put in the advent calendars were always sickeningly sweet. Any eggnog he brewed resulted in a potency decreed to be festively fatal. The same goes for the sprouts. One year, the elves decided that they couldn't sugarcoat the situation any longer. And elves love to sugarcoat things. They decided to explain this directly but calmly. Terry, we all love you, but we need to talk. We're going to go around the circle and tell you how your Christmas excitement is causing us problems. Problems? But it's Christmas and The elves smiled sadly. Poor Terry. Please give me another chance. I just need time to learn. With all due respect, Terry, you've been with us for many Christmases. We had really expected you to grow out of your training years ago. Terry, I'm afraid we just can't afford to keep fixing your mistakes. But Terry hatched a plan. A merry plan. A jolly plan. Oh, they'll see, he thought. I'll give one family the greatest Christmas anyone ever saw. Then all the elves will take back what they said, and Terry the terrific elf will be asked to organise Christmas forever. That night he set out in the snow car in such an excited rush that some of the presents fell out and were scuffled. He scattered them with magic dust and set them off again. The presents were glowing by the time he reached the Kringles house. You should have seen how carefully he hung the stockings at the feet of their beds. He bit the end of the carrots the boys had left out for Rudolph, and even wrote them a letter from Santa. He laid out their presents and prepared a lovely Christmas playlist to wake them up in the morning. Alas, all his hard work could not save Christmas. You see, boys and girls, some grown-ups are so stubborn that they will be unhappy even on Christmas. It began pleasantly enough. Mr. Kringle stood up to tell a joke that he'd written. It was about 2 reindeer and a golf club. However, Mr. Kringle was so nervous that he and ahed and said, "Oh no, I forgot to tell you about the..." Poor Mr. Kringle, it did not come across well. Some laughed politely, but Benjamin, a relation of Mrs. Kringle, decided to tell Mr. Kringle exactly what he thought of his joke. Oh, everyone erupted into disagreement. Some rushed to Mr. Kringle's defence. Some joined Benjamin. Sprouts were thrown with the sort of rage that only a family on Christmas Day can have for each other. "I've got to do something," said Terry. He blew the magic dust all around the dinner table. From nowhere, a colourful paper tube appeared in front of each person's plate. When they sat down and the magic dust took its effect, they all suddenly knew what to do. They began passing the crackers round and seeing what was inside of them after they went bang. Benjamin tore his paper hat over his swollen head. Terry worried that another fight would break out. He clicked his fingers and a scrap of paper fell from Benjamin's cracker. "Oh, it's a joke," Benjamin said. "I'll read it out. It'll definitely be funnier than yours, Mr. Crinkle." The joke was terrible. No, thought Terry, that joke was meant to bring them all together. Terry began to cry. He wondered if this whole thing had been a big mistake. He was such a bad elf. Terry, the terrible elf, had ruined Christmas. "Ho, ho, ho," said Santa, after calling Terry into his office. "You really planned to save Christmas by telling a joke, little elfling?" Terry's lip wobbled. "Yes, but only because this family was in chaos. I know I messed everything up, but they were at each other's throats. What happened? Have they all killed one another?" Santa lifted his head back and laughed. "Ho, ho, ho! Not in the slightest." "Do you mean they found my joke funny?" "Not exactly, no. When they read your joke, they all groaned." "Groaned?" "Yes, they were rather taken aback by just how bad it was." Terry sank. "But that's just the thing," he added quickly. "They groaned and said it was bad, truly awful, the worst joke anyone had ever told." Terry began to cry again. "But they agreed for once in the whole year. They agreed on something. They seem to be getting on marvellously now." "Because of my bad joke?" "Ho, ho, ho, because of your bad joke. So I've been thinking." Santa put a big warm hand on his shoulder. "Terry, I would like you to be our official Christmas cracker joke teller. On one condition. Every joke you tell must be as terrible as the one you told this morning." And they certainly were just as terrible. Worse, in fact. Year in, year out. Terry runs his own little workshop now. It's a small operation, but they take on a few more families every Christmas. He may drop the presents on his journey. He may leave the house a mess. But Terry knows that what really matters at Christmas is cozying up together in the ugliest jumpers, telling the stupidest jokes, and agreeing what a terrible year it has been, and being all the closer a family for it. Terry is a terribly wonderful elf.